Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian, Natalya, Philip, Jay. We're from Audio Excellence Canada. I'd like to welcome Natalya. She's going to be joining us for this video. She's a friend and a client. Today, we're going to cover a comparison that we did recently, a Parasound P6 preamp with the A23 Plus amp versus the PS Audio Stellar Gain Cell DAC preamp and the S300 stereo amplifier. Let me give you a little bit of background first. The Parasound combo is $4,200 in Canada, and the PS Audio combo is $4,698, so $4,700 Canadian. Both use ESS Sabre chips. Apparently, the rating is 32 bits, 384 kilohertz through the USB. Both have balanced inputs and outputs. The Parasound is rated for 160 watts into 8 ohms, 240 into 4. And the PS Audio is 140 watts into 8 and 300 into 4. The system that we used, we'll put the description in the bottom there, but basically we're using an Inuo's Zen Mini Mark III as a server using Rune as well, and Tidal, feeding the analog outputs, feeding the preamp and amp combinations. And we did tests with two different speakers. One set was the Sonetto, the Sonus Faber Sonetto 8s and 5s. And well, I used the 8s and 5s actually in both cases. And then we also listened to this new set of speakers, at least new to the store, called the Aurelia from Finland, I believe. Model escapes me because I listened to 3 different models just for comparison. Anyway, Natalya, why don't you start? What did you think?
Thanks. Well, for me, we listened to several tracks. James Blake, Limit to Your Love. Great. Do you want me to start back over with that?
No, just speak up a little bit, yes.
Okay.
You're with the boys, so speak up.
Thanks. Well, for the Parasound, there definitely was bass present, but I felt like it was uncontrolled. You could actually feel it in your chest and in your head. A little reminiscent of car trunk audio kind of feel.
My car doesn't sound like that.
But that was on like the James Blake Limit to Your Love track.
Yeah.
But the PS Audio, the bass was there, but what was there was tight, controlled, and a little more pleasant to listen to. You could distinctly hear the 2 bass notes from there. We listened to the mono track, Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong, Nearness of You. With the Parasound, you felt like there was an atmosphere, like you were in a lounge, you could listen to it, and it was a warm, inviting sound. The PS Audio was a little more smooth, maybe kind of like a clear recording, but not necessarily as engaging for me as the Parasound. But definitely, I think the PS Audio had better isolation, more distinct instruments. It was cleaner, I guess leaner in that respect as well, especially when listening to Hey Laura, Gregory Porter. But I definitely like the warmer sound of the Parasound.
Cool. Jay, where'd you go?
For me, I think I prefer the PS Audio.
Of course, Jay.
Just to disagree. Just because it was a bit more audiophile, and that's the type of sound I like these days. It changes. And so for me, there was better separation. The mid-bass control was a little bit better. And overall, there was a sense that the PS Audio was a little bit more leaner and a little bit more, I guess, darker in the background. The Parasound, on the other hand, seemed to reach down lower, was able to do all those low frequencies, but again, a little bit less controlled and a little bit less, I would say it was a little bit more fluffy, right? And definitely when we were playing tracks like Limit to Your Love by James Blake, or Edivo, or any of those tracks, Hey Now by London Grammar, you could definitely hear it in your chest, feel it in your chest and your head. And that kind of made me sick. So I don't know if I was a total fan of that. So that was one thing. And overall, I like both of them. Both of them had really good mid-bass punch, but again, the PS Audio had a bit more control and more focus, in my opinion. I prefer the mid-range on the Parasound. Sounded more natural and organic. So
I'm going to ban this word.
organic. But in relative to like all the audio gear out there, Hagel or a lot of the audio gear, the mid bass punch and overall tonality and so on didn't seem to be like out of place. Everything seemed to be perfectly reasonable. At the same time, I think I preferred the high frequency extension of the PS Audio, but there were minute differences.
All right, so Philip, go ahead. What do you think?
Well, honestly, I really didn't like either one of them, but in other words, it would not be my first choice, although both have really good qualities, and they don't really overlap each other, which is a surprising thing. So in other words, if you like a certain kind of sound, the Parasound will do it to a certain degree. And if you like another kind of sound, which is slightly more audiophile, like the one that kind of Jay likes, then the PS Audio combination does that to a significant degree. But neither one, to me, is a more complete kind of solution.
Don't use organic. I'd kill it.
I prefer things, obviously, because I'm the tube person in the store. I like my tube system much more than either one of these. And I think what Natalya was sort of pointing out to is that it does sound a bit more, I'm not going to use that word.
Organic.
In a way, but in a way, it does sound more, in a more classical sense, that kind of analog-ish, tube-ish kind of way.
Which?
The Parasound. It does have those kind of qualities because the bass is relatively uncontrolled. And in fact, when we first switched it on, it was truly bloated and not very well defined. Could I live with either one of them? Definitely. I mean, we played many of my standard test pieces, which were all mentioned by you guys. So it's not like I can actually. But yeah, so much of what both Natalya and Jay heard, I heard the same things. It wasn't, it's not that difficult to hear these kinds of differences in those two systems because they are quite different.
Yeah.
And
so let me play devil's advocate for a second. Recognize that what's unique in this situation is that a lot of viewers will not necessarily have access to the kind of crazy stuff that we use and play with all the time. So if you were able to somehow put yourself in a potential a buyer's shoes, somebody who's looking for good value, solid state electronics, perhaps, and given that it's not necessarily your taste or that you would buy them for yourself, how would you summarize each for a different person? Am I sort of making myself clear? Like, so
how is it different?
Somebody comes in and says, I've got Canadian $5,000 to spend, and I've got whatever speakers. How would you go about summarizing the PS Audio combo versus the Parasound combo in your case, Philip, for the specific buyer?
so I've sold quite a few PS Audio Stellar combos, specifically that preamp and the S300. And the way I've always categorized that setup is that it's really good value for the money because it does actually a lot of really, really good stuff. Albeit it has a slightly cooler presentation only when compared to the Parasound. And the way that the ice power modules inside of it, they have a particular kind of sound. And it's really easy to hear all the parts and pieces when you use the PS Audio. I think that's kind of what it goes for. And the DAC in it, I think, is particularly good. It's actually quite detailed, very natural sounding, and very fast. The whole combination is very fast. The Parasound, I would recommend to someone, and one of our esteemed friends of the store, he actually purchased a P6 from me and he loves it. It works exactly as he needed it to in his system. He wasn't expecting a great deal, but again, it has a very natural sound, but warmer. So it's not like we sell or we push any brand here that is not good. It's all, to a certain degree, really great stuff. There are some limitations to it. So it's unfair in a sense for me to say, well, blah, 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 and I don't like it. That's unfair. That's truly unfair. But it is the way it is. And I can't have that other sound out of my head. So I'm always comparing it. So how am I supposed to divorce and be, objective about two systems, which in my estimation are very good beginnings, but not the end. So.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
That was an awesome line.
Yeah.
Better than organic. So this video is kind of interesting because all of us essentially describe and heard the same thing. And I think all of us have respect for both products, both companies. I've been a big fan of Parasound since I got into the industry. And of course, PS Audio, because I've owned many, many, many PS Audio pieces. Just again, to remind everybody watching, we each listened independently except for, I think, Jay and Natalya, because Natalya is a visitor. And so Jay did the switching and setting up and so on. But she listened and made her own notes, and Jay did the same. I listened on multiple different occasions because I was actually very curious. I felt that since this represented a core, a meat, if you will, of a lot of viewers in terms of budgets, and certainly based on your comments and emails to me, I thought maybe it was important enough that I would spend a lot of time listening and comparing these two combinations. So the first time I did that, I used Sonus Faber speakers, the Sonetto 8s, and then I tried the Sonetto 5s. So both are actually quite full range. They don't necessarily go all the way down to the lowest bass, although the 8s can actually do that very comfortably. They go down to 32 hertz full power. I've actually got screenshots of the measurements. And then subsequently, as I mentioned earlier, we got some Aurelia speakers, which are much leaner, thinner speakers. They don't go quite as low in the bass, but they're very fast, very tight. Superb imaging. We'll do a separate video of these speakers in another time. And I did comparisons using a lot of different recordings. And I even lost my notes. I was mentioning to Natalya this morning, I lost my notes on the first two comparison sessions. And then this morning I came very early again just to listen. And then I found those early notes. And so I was doing a quick read through, and I was shocked. Well, I shouldn't be shocked, but I was really quite surprised at how consistent the notes were. So I'll just run through very quickly. Tonal balance, like everybody else has said, Parasound is warmer. To borrow a phrase from Jonathan Vallon of the Absolute Sound, more bottom up. Highs are slightly muted, so you can take that as a slightly warmer sound. PS Audio, definitely more open, more detailed. I gave the example of Cowboy Junkies mining for gold. You can hear the cymbal ride more clearly, the ambience of the church more clearly through the PS Audio. The tape rumble was more apparent through Parasound, and also Margot Timmons' sibilance is a bit more apparent through PS Audio. And then with deep bass, Parasound is more extended, more convincing, has more weight and power. Jay and I think and Natalya as well mentioned that it could be a little bit much, so you do need to watch that. It's not quite as controlled. I gave examples of Muse, Madness, and Boris Blank, Electrified. God, I hate these recordings. Mid-range, Parasound, again, warmer tone. PS Audio, more light, more nimble. Examples, Dean Martin, Smile, Friend and Fellow, great, I don't know if it's a group. I have a bunch of their recordings on my playlist. Friend
They're
and fellow,
all covers. They're all covers.
Yeah, What a Wonderful World. That's a gorgeous, gorgeous recording. Ben Webster, The Man I Love. In this particular recording, Parasound has this beautiful tone of the saxophone. The details are fantastic on both combinations, but the reed, especially towards the end, the PS audio was just drawing you in with the amount of detail you heard of the reed as Ben Webster was playing the saxophone. In the highs, again, Parasound's a bit more rolled off. PS audio more open. It can be bright. This is something you do have to watch out for. So if your recordings that you listen to are predominantly bright and your speakers are bright, now if you happen to like bright, this is a great combo. If you don't, be careful. Dynamics, PS audio, better micros, Parasound, better macros. PS audio has more transient detail clarity. In other words, I give an example of Fink, one of my recordings that I use all the time, Troubles What You're In. PS audio, when he plays on the guitar and he snaps on the string, you hear the clarity of the strings and the snap really well. Whereas when he smacks on the guitar body, the Parasound has more weight on the guitar body. And of course, Human by Rag and Bone Man. Again, don't laugh on the recordings. We use them as tests, but boy, we're really getting sick of the sounds. With Human, the deep bass, extension, and power, Parasound more convincing, not quite as controlled. PS audio didn't reach quite as deep, but tighter, more controlled. Soundstage, PS audio, bigger, more open. I felt Parasound a little bit more narrow, darker sounding. PS audio was also deeper. I gave the example of Cantate Domino, O Holy Night. That's a recording that I'm sure all of us have listened to. I rediscovered it. I'd forgotten that I'd had this recording all these years, and then I was going through Tidal, and then I searched for it, and there it was. So I played it. So with Oh Holy Night, about 18 seconds or so, if you're interested in this trivia, somebody closes the door in the church. And on the PS audio, you hear it very, very clearly. On the Parasound, it's muted, not quite as clear. One of my favorite recordings for Soundstage Depth, Manuel de Falla, Charles Dutoit, Symphony Orchestra, Montreal Symphony Orchestra, the three-cornered hat. Right at the very beginning, the introduction, the soprano starts singing, and she's all the way in the back. And with the PS audio, you could hear very distinct depth. The Parasound was more forward. Now, having said that, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The Parasound is more intimate. If you like your music so that the singer is more in your room, more intimate, the Parasound does do a better job there.
So one of the things, I mean, I know you're talking about all the individual pieces.
Yeah.
I never, ever, ever, ever listen that way.
Okay.
But I will remark about one thing that I do always try to engage myself in a manner of speaking, and that is, how connected am I to what is going on? And I think in that sense, the Parasound, as you say, it's more intimate. It actually draws you deeper into the recording, and if the recording is really good and they've captured the emotions, I think you can connect to it much more easily than you can with the Stellar.
Yeah. So just so I clarify, the reason I decided to go into all these details was because a lot of the emails I get, people are asking for more specific information, what they can compare, what they can listen for, especially from maybe younger or newer listeners who don't know what it is that some of the magazines are talking about, or some of us are talking about when we mention certain things. And so I decided, let's go into a bit more detail of these. But you're right. Having said all of these things, well, let me just finish one more thing. I mentioned earlier that the Parasound is more intimate and the PS audio is more laid back. What I mean by that is when you listen, for example, to Dean Martin singing Smile, Dean Martin is more in your room. He's more, to use Philip's words, connected. Sounds more intimate. With the PS audio, he sounds more like he's behind the speakers, so a little bit further away. So to sort of sum up, a system that can do all these audiophile things wonderfully is great if that's what you're looking for it to do. If you're looking for a system to really engage you, whatever that means, and this is something that I cannot judge for you, then you'd have to listen to it at some length and decide if it's drawing you into the music. So in my case, I actually did prefer the Parasound in terms of an engagement. I liked overall what it did more for me better. Not by a significant margin. If I were looking between the two, I would say that the Parasound drew me into the music more. But when I listened to the PS audio, especially for short periods of time at relatively high volumes, which I did on Sunday, the PS audio was like driving a Porsche GT3. Very hard on your back, but boy, you do a corner in the track, you hear the engine, right? It's just really very engaging for a short period of time, maybe not for very long. So that would be my analogy.
I think a really amazing kind of other thing I found out is how reactive both setups are with different speakers. Not even like different types of speakers as Magnepans or something, horns, but just dynamic speakers. Because the Sonetto sounded completely different. It almost seemed like they weren't enough for the Sonetto. The Sonetto had so much detail in the way I heard it. And then when I put the Aurelias on, it was like, okay, I get it. It was a bit more directly kind of connected. It's an overused word, but that's what I kind of...
It's another word I'm going to ban soon.
Yeah, I know. But it seemed like they were at the same kind of level, and that made a huge difference because it seemed more complete.
Which are we talking about?
The Aurelias. I mean, I didn't expect it. I was pleasantly surprised, and I was, of course, proven to be, a little bit wrong because I was expecting something else, and it didn't turn out that way. And I was expecting it to be better with the Sonettos, and the Sonettos obviously have much more ability than I had given it credit.
Any last words, guys? Anybody? No?
No.
All right, well, I guess that's it. If you like this video, and I apologize for the length, but if you like this video, please subscribe, turn on the notification. If you have any comments, please list them at the bottom. Send us an email if you'd like more personal responses, and we'll try and get to everyone. As always, thank you very much for watching. It's Audio Excellence from Canada, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye-bye.